What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Book Binge, where this week we're not doing a normal episode, we are doing a book haul. And my apologies if some of the audio and some of the video and stuff looks a little bit different than it should. Everything on my OBS reset not too long ago, so I had to go through and fix everything. In fact, I still haven't fixed everything. I just got some of the bare essentials fixed and tested and stuff so that I could still make some of these videos as I need to, and as such some of the mic sound is going to be a little bit different. I'm still not happy with a lot of the different settings. I had everything balanced quite well, I thought, to a point that I thought was really good before, but on very short notice I didn't really have the time to go through and more or less perfect a lot of that stuff for now. So that's just kind of the deal. Let's just get at it and go into the haul. Don't need to focus on any of that other stuff. Besides, this was a big one because as I did mention in my last book haul, I was going to stop doing monthly book hauls because I felt like I wasn't going to be doing them often enough to justify it, or I wasn't obtaining enough books often enough to justify doing a book haul every single month anymore. So I've decided to stop doing those. So I decided to do quarterly book hauls. But a couple different factors have definitely affected that. This is a big haul. This is probably my biggest haul. If it's not my biggest haul, it's my second biggest haul. Maybe my third. I don't know. It's up there with my biggest haul. So let's just go ahead and start off real quick with the non-physical stuff that I got. Let me just pull it up on my phone if I can find where the app is. I did get a couple arcs, so I finally made it to the big leagues, I suppose. I got a couple advanced review copies from a couple people for a couple of books this month. The first of those being The Prophet of Edan by Philip Chase. He did offer me an arc a little over a week, I think, before the book actually came out so that I could get a head start on it. I was in the middle of a million other books at the time, so I was not able to get a review out before release, and even if I was focusing on it the last week like I should have been, I would be much further in the book than I currently am. But I've been too busy playing Final Fantasy 16 in the meantime, so I did get The Prophet of Edan, and the second one was Obsidian Murders by Nicole Fox, or also known as Nicole Pierman, one of my friends on Discord. She did offer me an arc to get a head start on this for a review before release as well, although it'd be the written review for Goodreads and Amazon that are coming out on before the release of the book. I'm actually not entirely sure when that book releases. All I know is that I got the arc for that, and she said late July is the plan. As for the video review, that won't come out until early August because the video review for Prophet of Edan will come out in late August or in late July instead, depending on when I finish that book, because I should have been reading it all last week, but again, I have not. So those were the first two things, were a couple arcs from friends. So thank you to those who offered those to me. Then we're going to go right into the items that I was gifted, actually. So I did get a few gifts from friends. Thank you to my friends for doing that. Let me go ahead and grab a couple others and then show off all of the gifts that I got from friends. First off was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, probably the Steinbeck story that I'm most excited to give a read at some point. I believe I've read one of his stories before. I think, was The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway, or was it by Steinbeck? I don't remember. Let me look that up real quick before I embarrass myself further for not remembering. Yeah, Old Man and the Sea was Hemingway, so I'm trying to remember if I have actually read anything by Steinbeck. I'm sure I have read something, but I'm not entirely certain. But either way, this is the one that I'm most looking forward to reading. This was gifted to me by King James on Discord. Thank you so much for this. I did offer to pay for shipping, or pay for the book for him, but because it was in a little bit rougher condition, he just offered to send it to me for free. So thank you for that, even though I did want to pay you. So the next item that I was gifted was Metamorphosis by Ovid, gifted from Vince, which was a very unexpected gift. It just came out of nowhere, like no warning. There was no reason for it to come in the mail. It just did one day. And I was like, okay, well, somebody gifted me something random because I wasn't expecting a book, and then it was from Vince. So thank you to Vince, and I believe he has a channel on YouTube called like Vincent Jest or something like that. I'm not entirely certain. I'll try to link it if I remember. But yeah, this was one that I was gifted. For whatever reason, I actually didn't realize beforehand that this is a poem. Probably not too dissimilar from things like the Iliad and the Odyssey. So that actually has me a little bit more interested in actively reading it at some point soon, trademark, because epic poems are cool, and especially these older types of this style. So I'm more interested in it now than I was before, even though I did have a curiosity before. But yeah, so there's that one as well. The next couple items that I received came in essentially the same package, gifted from Reen. Thank you to Reen for gifting me, first of all, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. It should be. It shouldn't be that difficult. But this was one that he read recently and really, really liked, so he decided to spread the love because I have the trilogy on my wish list, and surprisingly, like, not that many words on each page. So even though there's a lot of pages, like 600 pages in the book, it doesn't seem like it would be that long or necessarily that difficult of a read. So I'm definitely looking forward to giving this a shot sometime, especially since a lot of the sci-fi that I'm more immediately interested in at the moment is space opera or space opera adjacent, sort of that style of sci-fi. I know that Tchaikovsky goes a little bit more into some of the ideas in this than maybe some of the other space operas out there, but this is widely acclaimed, very popular amongst even just my friends, so that makes me more interested in giving it a shot when I dig a little bit more into sci-fi at some point in time, when I'm a little bit more well versed with fantasy, generally speaking. The next item in the gift was The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is all 5 of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide books in one volume. I figured it was the best way to add it to my wish list because this volume by itself is cheaper than nearly any of the books individually if you got them in their own binding. So no reason not to get it in the omnibus, quite frankly, and probably one of the floppiest books I've ever handled in my life. Like, yeah, it's quite a floppy paperback, that's for sure. So it seems that they all fit in here because they're all really short. So Hitchhiker's Guide, at least the very first one, is one that has kind of been a bucket list book because even one of my brothers who doesn't read much read that in high school and absolutely adored it, thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And most people who I think like the book love it because it's one of the funniest things in the world. So I'm interested in giving that a shot at some point in time. Now, the next 3 items were all gifted by the same person, Patrick, who is a menace. I don't know why he does this to me, but Reen and Patrick decided to just, gift bomb me for whatever reason. But the first thing that I was gifted from Patrick was Solenoid by an author whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. Sorry, I'm not going to be that embarrassed. I wasn't expecting this to be quite as long as it is. All I know is that it has a reputation amongst a couple of booktubers who have covered it as being probably the best surrealist novel ever. So a true Winnie book that all of the Winnie friends of mine, I think they're currently reading it. The ones who have read it really like it, and the ones who are currently reading it also really like it. So I don't really know much about this beyond the fact that it is surrealist and going to be a pain in my butt. I really enjoy surrealist artwork. So some of my favorite artists are, I'm going to butcher these guys' names as well, but Beksinski and Marius, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's spelled a little bit different, but Lewandowski and Beksinski are 2 of my favorite artists, and their artwork is very surrealist. And I have no clue if surrealist novels are going to reflect the sort of surrealist painting styles at all, but I just know that some of that is my favorite art, so maybe it might be one of my favorite books as well whenever I get to it. We will see. Next up is a very short book, At Night All Blood is Black. Like I said, very tiny. I was not expecting this to be very small. I knew that it was a shorter book when friends would talk about it before, but this is quite short indeed. It's only like it's less than 150 pages, even with pages this tiny. And I didn't realize it was this recent as well. It seems it was originally published in 2018, with this translation being in 2020. So that's a heck of a lot more recent than I thought it was. And sorry, I had the book a little bit too high up for my face to be in focus. But this is one that I think has a little bit of a strange reception, generally speaking. It seems a lot of the people who've read it are either mixed on it, or there's a bunch of people who really like it, or there's a bunch of people who didn't really click with it. So it seems to be kind of one of those ones that's kind of like depends on who you are, where it will fall for you. So don't necessarily have any plans to read this anytime soon, but if there's ever a time over the rest of the year, which is most likely not, but if there's ever a time where it's like, okay, well, I have a little bit of extra time before my next major read, and this would only take me just a few days to get through, I might decide to read this at some point. But yeah, there is that. And then finally, the last gifted item to me is Danu's Curse by Nicole Pierman, who I did mention as being the other name for the author of Obsidian Murders above. So this is one that I had put on my wish list, and a friend gifted to me. Again, Patrick gifted this to me. I thinking there may at some point, maybe relatively soon, might be me and a few of us might decide to do like a buddy read, kind of read along thing for this book, since Nicole is a friend of ours, and Patrick already read the arc for Obsidian Murders, actually, and I'm going to read it very soon if I can. So we might decide to give this a read along as well. So this one seems to be a little bit longer than Obsidian Murders is, but it's still a short book, only 300 pages. So it shouldn't be one that will be too difficult to fit in at some point as well. Next up are a couple items that I actually wasn't really expecting to get anytime soon. One of these I was expecting to get sometime within the next year or so, but not any sooner than that. But then I ended up getting it anyway, and then the next one I got because of a sale on Amazon. So the first one of these is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I am known among some of my friends as not being super enthused with McCarthy because every single like little snippet of any of his books I've ever read, I've not been the fan of, like, just in terms of the writing style or how it reads for me. But with that being said, I knew that if I was going to read a McCarthy novel, The Road would be the first one that I would try for various different reasons. We don't necessarily need to get into them, and my apologies for saying the name out loud, Aloe. But generally speaking, this was the one that I was most interested in. I did tentatively kind of like plan a read along, just like, okay, well, maybe I'll try to read the book and have a couple friends who didn't necessarily love it, being Aloe and Patrick, give it a reread at some point. And my plan was originally October 2024, which is a long time in the future, yes, but then I decided, in the wake of relatively recent events at this point, McCarthy's passing, I decided, maybe I ought to just push it to October this year. My October this year isn't super packed, like, it has a few books in it, but all those books are real short, and The Road isn't necessarily long. Like, look at the size of that font, like big font, generous spacing between a lot of these like paragraphs and stuff like that, less than 300 pages. So also a very short book. I figure I might as well just give this a shot this year. So that's what I'm going to do, and decided to pick it up as such. And I did mention an Amazon sale. Amazon recently did a 2-for-3 sale, or a 3-for-2 sale, however you want to define it, where you could 3 eligible books you could put into your cart and buy, and it would only cost you the price of 2 of them. And No Country for Old Men was one that was also in that sale, and I decided to pick it up because if I was going to read another McCarthy novel that wasn't The Road, No Country for Old Men would probably be the next one I gave a shot to. And since I expressed interest in Mike's Discord, so Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, his Discord server, for a read-along of The Road, and a couple people kind of butted in and got read-along ideas for No Country for Old Men in December of this year, following The Road in October, and Blood Meridian in November. I don't think I'm going to do Blood Meridian. In fact, I'm quite certain that I'm not going to try that one, especially not this year. But if I enjoy The Road enough and I have time in December, I'm considering joining for No Country for Old Men, so I decided to pick it up just in case. This one is also not horribly long, again, only about 300 pages or so, so I don't see any reason not to at least give it a shot, but that is the case there. The next item on this haul is the physical edition of The Prophet of the Dance, so one that I had pre-ordered actually before. I had it pre-ordered before Philip even offered me the ARC for it, and since I love the first book so much, I knew that I was going to get it anyway. You'll see I have a bookmark in there, just under halfway through. If I had been reading over the past week like I was supposed to be doing, I would probably be closer to page 400 or 450 if not further, rather than being still only at 270 pages. But the thing is, I haven't read at all since like Monday, pretty much. Yeah. So Monday of at the time of this video's recording, it was like 5 or 6 days ago the last time that I read. So I should be a lot further in this, but I'm not. But I'm gonna try to get more read as soon as I can, quite frankly. But I knew that I had other stuff to do, and I've wanted to game anyway. So dumb excuses, I know, but that is the case. Next item was actually the first couple things that I got over the quarter, I suppose, the second quarter of 2023, those being the deluxe edition hardcovers of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. So when I read Dune, I knew that I wasn't going into it as reading it for the full series, and I don't think I ever will read the full Dune series. And I don't just mean like skipping the Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert books, I just mean like the 6 Frank Herbert books. I enjoyed Dune enough for what it was and thought the ending was actually pretty good. I know a lot of people who were not impressed or did not really like much about the ending of Dune and thought that Dune Messiah is the true ending of the book. But I liked the end of Dune as was, but I know that I will want to give it a reread at some point. But I knew that if I did give it a reread, I would want to go through these 2 books and probably also God Emperor as well with it. Those are the 4 that I'm interested in giving a shot. So I decided to pick up the deluxe hardcovers for those 2 sequels since they came out, and that is the version of Dune that I have somewhere on one of these shelves. I still haven't organized all my shelves over there, but that is the next item. Up next is another sci-fi series. This is a duology that was recommended to me by Words in Time when I did a video collaboration with him, 5 space opera recommendations for fans of Sun Eater. That was video that kind of blew up for my channel like huge. Most views and absolutely the most watch time of anything I've ever released. Thank you to everybody who tuned into that, and thank you to Jonathan for the recommendations. But this is Ilium and Olympos by Dan Simmons, a duology that is kind of like a modern sci-fi retelling or reimagining of the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer. I loved the Iliad and the Odyssey, and because of that, once I learned the concept of these and the fact that I generally just love anything based off of, ancient Greek history and or mythology or anything like that, I always very heavily interested in all that stuff. Once I learned the concept of these 2 books, I was like, I want to read them, even if Olympos apparently doesn't stick all of the landings. The fact that it is ambitious as it is, as Jonathan described it to me, and the fact that it is relegated to just being the 2 books like the Iliad and the Odyssey are, I'm like, I want to give that a shot. So if there's anything I do read that is sci-fi, I think the Children of Time trilogy might be the next one I give a shot, but this one might be up there as well. It's one that I definitely want to give a try. Very long books. They're, this first one's over 700 pages, and the second one is just under 900 pages. And sure, they're mass markets, which normally I wouldn't grab mass market paperbacks, but that's a totally different story. Sure, they're mass markets, but I'm sure they're going to be long reads regardless. But yeah, they're ones that I think are really good, and I'm not the biggest fan of the quality of this Ilium edition in the mass market. It's not my favorite in terms of like the floppiness and whatnot, but it seems like it's going to have much less of an issue with spine cracking and breaking and stuff like that than most mass markets are. But Olympus especially is like super floppy. Like even just holding it, it's inclined to do that, which most mass markets aren't. So I don't think I'm going to have any spine problems with Olympus, though I might with Ilium. Next up, since I have talked about a couple Winnie type of books on this list, I am going to show off a couple books that I did buy that might satisfy some of the anti-Winnies as well. Anti-Winnies, so to speak, the people who aren't the biggest fans of the Winnie crew. These are the first couple books in, what is it called? Shadows of the Apt by Adrian Tchaikovsky, so more Tchaikovsky, Empire in Black and Gold, which is book number 1. And then Dragonfly Falling, which is book number 2. So these are ones that I didn't actually realize they were fantasy until there was a read-along for the series that started earlier this year, and the people reading them have been really enjoying the books, which is, something that, like, if someone reads a book and they really enjoy it, for most people that's enough for me to be like, okay, well, I'm kind of interested in that now. But I didn't realize that this was a fantasy series. I had kind of assumed that Tchaikovsky was just a sci-fi author as a result of, the Children of Time series. But of course, it was really kind of dumb and naive of me to assume. But the fact that this is a little bit more on the fantasy side, I'm like, well, I'm interested in giving it a try. Plus, I really like the simplistic nature of these covers. I think they actually look really neat. So that was something that I grabbed a couple of. I initially only grabbed the first book, but this was part of that 3-for-2 sale, 2-for-3 sale, whatever you want to call it. So I decided to pick up the second one as well. But yeah, those were the next addition to the home library. The next thing I decided to pick up was I'm going to start a new gradual collection of another series. This is being The Fall by Ryan Cahill, and I think it might be more pronounced Cahill, but I've never personally not pronounced the name Cahill, so my apologies if I pronounce it a little bit differently than maybe it's supposed to be pronounced. My apologies again, but yeah, this is a very, very short book. Like, it's an 86-page novella, so absolutely tiny. One that you can actually grab for free if you sign up for Ryan Cahill's newsletter. You can get the digital version for free. I decided not to do that because I tend to not enjoy reading digitally. I only do that for rare exceptions, like when I started The Prophet of Adan by Philip Chase, I was reading it digitally, and when I start reading, what's it called? Obsidian Murders by Nicole Fox, I'm going to be doing that digitally, obviously, because that's the only version I have, but generally speaking, I like to read physical, and I didn't want the hardcovers. If I can get good paperback editions versus hardcovers, I'm going to prefer the paperbacks every time, so I decided to pick up the physical of this, and over the course of the rest of the year, I'm going to pick up the physical versions of the rest of the series because it's one that I've heard a lot about recently, and not any bad things, actually. Any criticisms I've heard of the series are things that I'm not against at all. So yeah, that's basically something that I am looking forward to, not necessarily starting soon, but I would like to read it at some point given the reception. I'm definitely going to collect the books while the series is being worked on. It might not be until the series is finished that I actually start it, but I decided to start picking it up anyway. And speaking of collections of series or books that I've, been obtaining gradually, James Clavell's Agent Saga is one of those series that I've been doing. So next up was book number 4, King Rat, taking place in 1945. I believe this was the first one that he wrote in the saga. I'm not entirely certain of that, but I think that might be the case. And finally, one of these books that isn't 1,000 pages. So, I mean, there was one of them, I think it might have been the second book, that was only like 900, but the other two were both over 1,000 pages long. Quite long. This one's only about 500 pages, so it's still not short, but it's a lot shorter than the others were. Yeah, like I said, I'm just kind of continuing my collection for the series. Next up was something that was just kind of a little bit more of a random pickup, and one that I don't necessarily see myself like reading per se, like maybe reading along with, but this is Bedtime Stories Volume 1, 40 Creepy Tales from Around the World. So one of my favorite YouTube channels actually is called Bedtime Stories, with narrations, with, artwork kind of like this, very simplistic, black and white, but very effective and evocative artwork. It's very good, with narrations that are very high quality of just kind of like creepy stories of various different things, whether it be disappearances, strange deaths, cryptids, aliens, like random different stories from around the world, all of them being like known stories, like true stories or stories from other people. There are a couple of them are like stories from subscribers. More recently, a couple of their videos I remember being like stories of like personal, like paranormal-esque experiences from the creators of the channel. Some of my favorite stuff to just watch or listen to occasionally, so I decided to pick up this first volume of the first 40 of those, and the second volume has the next 40 of those. I'm going to pick that up at some point. I hope they plan to continue releasing some of these, because they haven't released any in quite a while, and I hope they continue to do more, because I would like to have physical versions of all of them as well, besides the narrations, because I think that would be kind of one of those things that would be fun to read aloud to other people. The videos are very high quality, and I would actually recommend those over just reading the stories, but apparently the stories have a couple revisions in them as well, so I kind of want to read along with some of them. But that is the basic gist of that. But if you thought that one of my other pickups earlier was a true Winnie book, i.e. being Solenoid, this is the actual Winnie book, the one that many of my friends are going to be very excited about me having picked up, but the fact that I picked it up is only going to have them pestering me to read it even more. That being Terra Nostra by Carlos Fuentes. So this is the true Winnie book. If there's any Winnie style book that I have not, or that I got a lot of recommendations for, or had a lot of people pestering me to try to read it before, I think the second book that I've gotten the most recommendations for was the Bird book, which we all know I didn't necessarily love. So the fact that I decided to pick this up says a lot, but I did find a very high quality version of it. The only problem with it is really that there's a little bit scuff here. The cover had a little bit, or I think the side of it, I don't remember for sure, had a little bit like that stickum residue from stickers. But because of the texture of the book, that was easy to clean. So high quality version for relatively cheap compared to the Bird book, which was a very high quality version for not cheap at all. This is one that I don't have any plans to read soon. Don't pester me, Cobby. Don't pester me, Patrick. Patrick knows about this. But Cobby, do not pester me about reading this, please. You're only going to make me not want to read it. I picked it up for when I do decide to read it at some point. It's a lot longer than I thought it was. Like, a lot longer. It's flipping 800 pages of this. And apparently this is also... it's one that I am excited for a little bit because of the reputation amongst my friends, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy book to pick up when I do. And last, but certainly not least, was the second secret project by Brandon Sanderson, The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. So I did get the ebook as well, but you probably saw that when I showed it off a little bit earlier. This looks real neat, just as the first one did, but even just skimming through this, I think the first thing that stands out to me is how even just like the doodles on the inside of the pages, like these little things just kind of tell a story of their own, and how that kind of goes along. Even just skimming through, it's really cute how those are. I'm pretty sure those doodles don't exist in the secret project version of this. So, and I've heard from some people that those doodles actually tell a better story than the story itself is. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's definitely something that's worthy of note. I'm surprised that Secret Project 2 was the one that they decided to do the non-Cosmere version of. I thought that was going to be like Secret Project 4 or something, but it is what it is. At the time that this video is releasing, the Secret Project 3 ebook version, I've already received that, but because I'm recording this at the end of June, and because I'm only counting everything through the end of June, I'm not showing that off in this video. That'll be in the next video, the next quarterly book haul. But thank you guys for watching. I had fun with this one, got a lot of great stuff, and thank you to the friends who did gift me books. Completely unexpected and completely unnecessary. Reen and Patrick just decided to give me several books together for frankly no reason at all, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Thank you guys for supporting my book buying addiction, because I have a problem with that. I haven't had as much of a problem this year, generally speaking, but thank you for supporting me nonetheless. Massive thanks as well to those who offered me ARCs, both Nicole and Philip. Thank you guys. I very much appreciate that. I'll get to those and get them reviewed as soon as I can. As soon as they're on the schedule, because they're already scheduled. Everything that comes out on my channel is pretty much scheduled. And again, apologies for the quality of the audio and probably the visuals as well. Like, it doesn't look the greatest in my direct monitor because I haven't had a chance to balance a lot of this stuff yet. Apologies for that again. A lot of technical difficulties the last couple weeks, basically. The next one of these book hauls will be in October, covering the items I obtained in July, August, and September, so we'll kind of see how that looks in 3 months. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll be back in the next video, which should be this Thursday, with another Wheel of Time diary, assuming nothing else goes wrong in the meantime, so I'll see you guys then.